The iconic bomber of the European theater, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, carried the fight to the Germans in the skies over Europe, even though it was the Japanese who attacked the Americans at Pearl Harbor in December 1941. The official policy of the United States and its allies was to defeat Germany first. The problem was there was no easy way to hit Germany, as a cross-channel invasion of Europe was still years away. The British had been bombing from the air, but heavy losses forced them to switch to nighttime area bombing, greatly reducing its effectiveness. The Americans, on the other hand, were proponents of daylight, precision bombing using their state-of-the-art and top-secret Norden bomb sight. They also believed they had an aircraft which could fight its way in and out of the target area, unescorted, and return home safely. That aircraft was the Boeing B-17, better known as the Flying Fortress. In years following World War I, the United States was heavily influenced by Italian air power theorist Giulio de Hette, who called for heavy investment in a force of bombers to fly over the front lines, destroy an enemy's infrastructure, and break their will to fight. In theory, in the words of British Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, the bomber will always get through. The Americans believed the B-17, with the Norden bomb sight, could be that bomber. It was a four-engine, heavy bomber which first flew on July 28, 1935. It had a crew of 10 and could carry 6,000 pounds of bombs at 300 miles per hour for a range of 2,000 miles. Its famous nickname came from the fact it carried 13.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns for protection and had a legendary toughness for carrying its crew home on one engine or even with the tail shot away. The first B-17 raid in Europe took place on August 17, 1942, when 12 planes attacked the railroad marshalling yards in Rouen, France. American bomber numbers continued to build in Europe, and attacks and losses began to build up. While the U.S. 15th Air Force also had B-17s, the most famous group to fly them during the war was the U.S. 8th Air Force based out of England. B-17s flown by the 8th saw some of the fiercest combat of the war. As the Americans flew further into Europe and Germany, the missions became deadlier. One of the worst days of the war for the B-17 and its crewmen was the second raid on German ball bearing production in Schweinfurt, Germany, on October 14, 1943. Losses were so heavy on the mission, it became known as Black Thursday. The B-17, for all its armor and firepower, was simply unable to continue to fly unescorted against swarms of German fighter aircraft and their sophisticated air defense system. Clearly, something had to be done because the bomber was not getting through. But help soon arrived when the North American P-51 Mustang began to reach the beleaguered 8th Air Force in large enough numbers to make a difference. The B-17 finally had a fighter which could escort them in and out of Germany and began to overwhelm German defenses and industry. With a renewed focus and power, the Allies finally achieved the air supremacy needed over Normandy for the D-Day landings in June 1944. By the end of the war, the B-17 was an obsolete aircraft which had been surpassed by another Boeing bomber, the B-29 Super Fortress. The plane was pulled out of frontline service and used as a transport plane and even drones. While the U.S. had less than 200 at the start of the war, more than 12,000 B-17s were produced by the end and served in every theater. Many B-17s survive today in museums, and there are some that still fly. For many, the B-17 is the iconic bomber of the war, and the Flying Fortress remains a symbol of American might. Imagine a time not so long ago when the fate of the free world hung by a thread. A time when the very heavens became a battlefield, and the courage of young men, strapped into magnificent machines, carried the hopes of nations on their wings. Today, we journey back to that extraordinary era to tell the story of an aircraft that became a legend, a symbol of unwavering determination, and the very embodiment of American might. We're talking about the iconic Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, the magnificent bomber that carried the fight directly to the enemy in the treacherous skies over Europe. This wasn't just a plane, it was a fortress in the air, a beacon of hope, and a testament to American ingenuity and valor. Its story is one of breathtaking innovation, unimaginable sacrifice, and ultimately triumph. Prepare to be inspired, to marvel at the courage of those who flew her, and to rediscover why the Flying Fortress remains etched in the annals of history as one of the most legendary aircraft of all time. It's a stark historical truth, etched into the memories of a generation, the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. That fateful day thrust America directly into the raging inferno of World War II at the hands of Imperial Japan. However, despite this direct assault, the official policy of the United States and its allies, primarily Great Britain, was clear and strategically vital: Germany first. The Axis powers, led by Nazi Germany, posed the existential threat to democracy and freedom in Europe, and defeating Hitler was the paramount objective. But herein lay a monumental problem, a strategic Gordian knot. How do you strike at the heart of Germany, a fortress continent, when a direct cross-channel invasion of Europe was still years, agonizing years away? The Allied forces needed a way to apply pressure, to erode the enemy's industrial capacity and morale, without putting boots on the ground. The British, who had been fighting valiantly for years, had attempted to do this from the air. Their early bombing campaigns, however, met with devastating losses, forcing them to a grim reality. Heavy losses compelled the Royal Air Force to switch to nighttime area bombing, a tactic that, while safer for their crews, significantly reduced the precision and effectiveness of their strikes. It was a trade-off born of necessity. The Americans, on the other hand, arrived with a different philosophy, a bold conviction: daylight, precision bombing. They championed this approach, banking on their state-of-the-art and, at the time, top-secret Norden bomb sight, an instrument of incredible accuracy. And they believed they possessed the perfect aircraft, a machine that could not only fight its way into and out of heavily defended target areas unescorted, but also return its precious crew home safely. That aircraft, my friends, was nothing less than the magnificent Boeing B-17, soon to be immortalized as the Flying Fortress. A belief in technological superiority and sheer grit was about to be put to the ultimate test. The very concept of the B-17 and the American strategy for its deployment wasn't born overnight. It was deeply rooted in the strategic thinking that emerged from the crucible of World War I. In the years following that devastating conflict, the United States, along with many other nations, was heavily influenced by the visionary, albeit controversial, Italian air power theorist, Giulio de Hette. De Hette preached a revolutionary doctrine: heavy investment in a powerful force of bombers. His vision was to unleash these aerial leviathans over enemy front lines, systematically destroying their industrial infrastructure and, crucially, breaking their will to fight. In theory, this doctrine was succinctly captured by British Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin's famous and somewhat chilling pronouncement: "The bomber will always get through." The Americans, with their unwavering faith in technological advancement, believed the B-17, combined with the unparalleled accuracy of the Norden bomb sight, was the very embodiment of de Hette's dream. This was no ordinary aircraft. It was a four-engine heavy bomber, a truly impressive feat of engineering for its time, which first took to the skies on July 28, 1935, a full 6 years before Pearl Harbor. Manned by a courageous crew of 10, this aerial leviathan could carry a formidable 6,000 pounds of bombs at a remarkable 300 miles per hour, boasting a staggering range of 2,000 miles. But it wasn't just its offensive capabilities that earned it its legendary status. Its famous nickname, the Flying Fortress, came from the daunting array of firepower it carried. No less than 13.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, strategically placed to protect it from every angle. This wasn't just a bomber, it was a self-defending war machine. And beyond its armaments, the B-17 developed a legendary toughness, a reputation for bringing its crew home even in the most dire circumstances, on one engine, or even with its tail section brutally shot away. Imagine the sheer tenacity, the engineering marvel that allowed for such survival. It was a testament to American grit and a beacon of hope for every crewman who flew her into battle. But even a fortress can be breached, and the ultimate test was still to come. The stage was set, the aircraft ready, and the resolve of the American forces unwavering. On August 17, 1942, a date etched into the history of aerial warfare, the Boeing B-17 made its dramatic debut in the European theater. 12 magnificent flying fortresses, a relatively small but determined force, embarked on their inaugural mission. Their target, the critical railroad marshalling yards in Rouen, France. This wasn't just a bombing run. It was a declaration, a statement of intent, signaling America's entry into the high-stakes aerial war over Europe. In the months that followed, American bomber numbers in Europe began to build steadily, a growing armada of flying fortresses preparing to unleash their might. With this increase in aircraft came a corresponding escalation in attacks. The missions became more frequent, pushing deeper into enemy territory, challenging the sophisticated German air defenses. And tragically, with the buildup of attacks, came a heart-wrenching buildup of losses. Each fallen fortress represented 10 brave souls, 10 families forever changed, a stark reminder of the immense human cost of this aerial campaign. While the U.S. 15th Air Force, operating from bases in Italy, also played a crucial role with its B-17s, the most famous, and perhaps the most legendary, group to fly them during the war was the U.S. 8th Air Force. Based out of England, these courageous airmen and their flying fortresses would face some of the fiercest, most brutal combat of the entire war. Their missions took them deep into the heart of Hitler's Germany, challenging the very notion of the unbreakable Third Reich. They were pushing the boundaries of aerial warfare, testing the limits of men and machines, and entering a realm where courage was the only currency. But as they pressed deeper, a harrowing reality began to emerge, a realization that even a flying fortress had its breaking point, and the greatest test of their resolve and the very viability of the unescorted daylight bombing strategy was about to be unleashed. As the brave American airmen of the 8th Air Force flew ever deeper into the heart of Europe and Germany, the missions became, with each passing day, deadlier and more harrowing. The early belief that the B-17, with its formidable firepower, could fight its way in and out unescorted began to shatter against the harsh reality of German aerial resistance. The enemy was adapting, innovating, and unleashing increasingly sophisticated air defense systems and swarms of highly skilled fighter aircraft. One of the darkest, most brutal days of the entire war for the B-17 and its courageous crewmen occurred on October 14, 1943. It was the second raid on Germany's vital ball bearing production facilities in Schweinfurt. Ball bearings were the lifeblood of German industry, crucial for everything from tanks to aircraft, and crippling their production was a strategic imperative. But the cost of this imperative was almost unbearable. The losses suffered on that single mission were so catastrophic, so utterly devastating, that the day earned a chilling, indelible moniker, Black Thursday. The numbers were sickening. Wave after wave of B-17s were torn from the sky, their crews facing unimaginable horrors. It became terrifyingly clear. The B-17, for all its armor, for all its vaunted firepower, was simply unable to continue flying unescorted against the relentless onslaught of German fighter aircraft and their increasingly sophisticated air defense system. The skies over Germany had become a meat grinder, and the losses were unsustainable. The grim reality of Stanley Baldwin's adage, that the bomber will always get through, was being brutally disproven. Clearly, something had to be done. A radical shift was needed, or the entire daylight precision bombing strategy and the lives of thousands of brave airmen would be tragically lost. But just when hope seemed to be fading, an unexpected hero, a true game-changer, was about to arrive. And its impact would be nothing short of miraculous. Just when the darkness of Black Thursday threatened to extinguish the very flame of the daylight bombing campaign, a beacon of hope, a true savior, soared into view. Help, in the form of a revolutionary aircraft, finally arrived. The North American P-51 Mustang, a fighter plane of unparalleled speed, range, and agility, began to reach the beleaguered 8th Air Force in numbers large enough to make a profound, game-changing difference. It was a moment of sheer relief, a turning point that would irrevocably alter the course of the air war. The B-17, the magnificent flying fortress, finally had what it desperately needed, a fighter escort that could accompany it all the way into Germany, protect it over the target, and guide it safely home. For too long, the fortresses had been vulnerable deep inside enemy territory, beyond the reach of their shorter-ranged escorts. The Mustang, with its exceptional fuel capacity and formidable combat capabilities, changed everything. The skies, once dominated by German fighters preying on the vulnerable bombers, now witnessed a new balance of power. With the P-51 Mustangs providing a protective umbrella, the B-17s were unleashed with renewed ferocity and precision. They began to systematically overwhelm German air defenses, meticulously dismantling vital industrial targets. The combined might of the bombers and their long-range escorts inflicted crippling damage on Germany's war machine, eroding their capacity to fight on all fronts. This wasn't just about winning battles, it was about achieving absolute dominance of the skies. And with a renewed focus and unprecedented power, the Allies finally achieved the air supremacy that was absolutely critical over Normandy, paving the way for one of the most pivotal moments in human history, the D-Day landings in June 1944. The bomber was indeed finally getting through, and the tide of war was turning. By the end of World War II, a mere few years after its heroic heyday, the once cutting-edge B-17 flying fortress, like so many wartime innovations, was in many ways an obsolete aircraft. The relentless march of technology, accelerated by the demands of global conflict, meant that even a marvel like the B-17 had been surpassed. Another Boeing bomber, the gargantuan B-29 Superfortress, a truly next-generation aircraft, had taken its place, ushering in a new era of strategic bombing. Consequently, the B-17 was gradually pulled from frontline combat service. But its story didn't end there. These venerable aircraft, with their legendary toughness, continued to serve in various capacities. Many were repurposed as transport planes, ferrying vital supplies and personnel across the globe. Others even found an unexpected second life as drones, test subjects for burgeoning missile technology, a fascinating, if somewhat ignominious, twilight for a war hero. The numbers alone tell an astonishing tale. At the start of the war, the United States possessed fewer than 200 B-17s. Yet by the end of the conflict, an astounding more than 12,000 B-17s had been produced, a testament to American industrial might and the urgent need for this iconic bomber. They served in every theater of the war, leaving an indelible mark wherever they flew. Today, the legacy of the Flying Fortress endures. Many B-17s survive, carefully preserved in museums around the world, silent sentinels of a bygone era. And miraculously, a precious few still fly, their powerful radial engines roaring to life, thrilling crowds and serving as living testaments to the bravery of those who flew them. For many, the B-17 isn't just an old plane. It is the iconic bomber of the war, a majestic symbol of American might, courage, and ingenuity. The Flying Fortress remains a powerful, poignant reminder of a generation's sacrifice and the unwavering spirit that carried the fight for freedom to the very gates of tyranny. Its roar still echoes, a timeless tribute to the heroes of the sky. What are your memories or connections to the B-17 or to the brave men and women of World War II? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into history.